I can create one or two branches of a second variety. So, which trees can be crown grafted? All palm fruit trees, apple trees, pear trees, possibly quince trees, and also on cherry trees, apricot trees, and peach trees, as well as plum trees. To do crown grafting, you need to collect the scions very early in the winter. So, we're talking about January or early February to collect young shoots that haven't started growing yet, that are still dormant. We're looking for shoots from the previous year, like this one. The scions were taken from a parent tree, the mother plant. This is the variety we've chosen to actually transfer onto another tree. Here, these are Reine des Rainettes that will be grafted onto a Reine Clochard, so they're always taken from terminal shoots. You can clearly see the terminal bud right here. We're looking for a good section, just a bit smaller than the size of a pencil. We always take one or two extra scions. This is a precaution, and we'll have to keep them waiting until the actual grafting, which never happens before March 15th, to prevent them from starting to grow. They need to be kept in a cold environment. You can store them by healing them in, like this, in a pot with potting soil or sand. It can also be done in a corner of the garden, directly in the soil. We will bury the scions halfway, and it needs to be in the shade, in a place that stays cold. Otherwise, the other option is to wrap the scions in a damp cloth and place them at the bottom of the refrigerator, making sure to keep the cloth slightly moist regularly. With the healing in technique, the potting soil or sand must remain moist. When we perform top grafting on a branch, we will use 3 scions. The principle of top grafting is to change the variety on a tree. These are trees that are already several years old, generally at least 10 years. In the end, we give a bit of new life to a specimen that might be somewhat old. In fact, we are going to graft a tree that has a rootstock and has developed a trunk and main branches, and we will graft onto these main branches. The sign that it's time to graft is when you see the buds swelling and the tree is just about to produce its first flowers and leaves. Generally, we also pay attention to the lunar phases, since we prefer to graft during the waxing moon. So we take the tree that we want to top graft. Obviously, we will have to do a very severe pruning on all the main branches. In fact, we will remove all the small shoots. You can do the whole tree, the entire thing, or you can also decide to do just one main branch. And in fact, you'll end up with a tree that has 2 varieties of apple. You should still expect that the vigor will be different. You never really know if the grafts will be able to fully benefit from the vigor of the whole tree once you leave the rest. So you'll end up with sections of main branches that can be 5 or 6 centimeters thick, or even larger, up to 10 centimeters. And this cut is made just before grafting. The preparation of the scion is done with a grafting knife using a well-sharpened blade. And so you'll make a bevel on both sides of the shoot. We are working on the lower part, meaning the terminal bud is at the top and we're definitely at the bottom. Over a length of 2 centimeters, there's no point in making it much longer. A bevel means it's wider at the top and thinner at the bottom. We're not trying to make it as thin as a sheet of paper either. You need to keep a certain thickness. The sap flows all around, and then we make a small notch at the top on both sides. We're going to slide in the scion, and it will really rest on the edge of the main branch. We'll make 3 vertical incisions in the bark. So using the grafting knife, we'll lift the bark, and the scion, which has been cut at an angle, will be slid behind this bark, since that's where the sap flows. There will then be tissue formation. The tree will close the wound so that afterwards there can be communication. So we'll place these 3 scions like a triangle around the main branch, and then we need to tie them. But it's more of a protective wrapping than a tie meant to hold things together. It actually holds on its own, you see. Now, there are several techniques for tying. You can do it with whatever you have on hand, like cellophane, the clear stretch kitchen wrap. You can cut strips and use those for protection. You can do it, I personally do it with Teflon tape. That white tape used in plumbing, you really want to wrap all the way around to protect it. When working with large sections, finish the job with a healing putty on the branch. Spring comes very quickly after that and the vegetation starts to grow. You need to remove everything that sprouts below the grafts. The graft may start to grow, there are buds, and it will produce its first leaves, but that doesn't mean it's a guaranteed success. You'll need to wait a few more weeks to see if the graft has taken. The graft will really start to grow, otherwise it will dry out very quickly. Let's say at most 2 months after grafting, you'll know. So you cut and remove the binding. Healing will happen gradually, and generally for the first 3 years you don't do anything, you just let it grow. There will be some dominant grafts and others that are not. And after 3 years there will be pruning operations to select. You won't necessarily be able to keep everything. After that you'll need to shape the tree, since these grafts will have to become new main branches. So all of this usually takes about 5 years of training before you start to see the first fruiting appear.